Welcome back to the Dungeon Master's Block, the place where we come to talk about the Dungeon Master, the most important person in the game. I am one of three hosts, DM Neal, aka Jote Maniac.
And I am DM Chris, aka DM Chris.
And I'm DM Mitch. Yeah, that's it. We're all here, which, I mean, you've probably guessed it from the title already, but we're doing a creation and inspiration. Neal, you said it's been like a couple episodes since we've done this before?
Yeah.
I think like 22 or something, right?
Yeah,
Neal?
give or take 90.
Which is crazy, because, like, I don't know, these are like my favorite episodes, and I think for a lot of listeners, they're favorites as well.
Yeah, and we've definitely mentioned it before, but the insider baseball is that they haunt us. Because
it's harder and harder.
Yeah, most episodes we talk about ideas, especially as part of the episode, and talk about homework. So the idea of just coming up with stuff out of nowhere becomes tough. But that's okay, because we just decided if all three of us show up, many hands make less work.
Yes. Which means we all did 3. And that's way easier than back in the day with everyone coming
Now,
with
that being said, we will have 10 because Neal has come up with a brilliant idea, which will either turn out to be amazing or a completely and total train wreck, where at the end of this episode, we're going to come up with one together on the spot.
Yep.
I think it depends on how much we've laughed along the way. What kind of idea?
Oh, I'm sure. However, train wreck or not, we'll be laughing. But and we are going to have a part 2 to this. We'll tell you a little bit more about that in the outro. But be excited for that. I'm more excited about the part 2, honestly, than I am about the part 1. But yeah, just a little. You got to stay to the end, or you can just skip everything that we say right now and go to the end and listen and find out.
Oh man, that would be the best choice. I don't care about any of their ideas. I'm going straight to the end of this thing.
Imagine if there's a listener out there who's like, I only listen to the intros and the outros. I don't listen to them.
It'd be like the opposite of every podcast listener.
Never listen to a story time. Never listen to a DM Nastic. Never listen to a meet. Only intros and outros.
I only listen to intros and outros and ads. That's it.
Well, on that note, and I feel like because we are obligated to say it, let's head to the meat.
I'm starving. We ain't had nothing but maggoty bread for 3 stinking days.
Why can't we have some meats?
Looks like meat's back on the menu, boys.
Here for the meat, we have creation and inspiration. Like we already said, there's 3. We definitely put them in the order of best to worst. No, we did not. So, Mitch, what is your idea number 3?
Oh, man. Number 3? So I've got to go
I don't know. It doesn't matter.
In the, like, am I reading from the bottom? Okay, I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go with number 3. My number 3 I called the imprisoned one. I know that we've done like little differences in creation inspiration. All of mine are like campaign adventure ideas. So the imprisoned one, the campaign idea is that we've talked about dead gods before on the show, quite a bit actually. This is a different variation of that. A god has been imprisoned by another god. And this particular god that is imprisoned is the PCs, their united like deity that they favor. And so the world goes without that deity. We've talked about that a lot on other episodes dealing with God's death and what does that have to do. Perhaps if a god is imprisoned, there's a little bit of strength left there. But anyway, the god is imprisoned and the campaign is all about your PCs have to go and find out where this god is imprisoned and release them from the prison. And assumingly, if it's been imprisoned by another god, there are going to be a whole bunch of challenges and terrible fights along the way to release that god from their imprisonment.
I love it. I'm terrified like how close it works with one of mine. So
yeah, we did
I think I'm just going to... No, we didn't. We didn't. Okay, so let's do this. I'm just going to say the one that I wasn't going to say first, but I'm going to say it now. So the campaign idea I had was called The Locked Door.
Okay.
So basically there's surprise, it's a locked door, but the idea is to also have it I know I'm breaking the mold, but the idea is to have it somewhere that is very public. So either I think of like the Forgotten Realms, if it was a locked door inside the Yawning Portal, or it's in a town square, or somewhere a lot of foot traffic, almost a tourist attraction, and no one knows why it's locked, no one knows what's behind it, and basically will the party choose to take on this quest to figure out how to unlock this door. And is that good? Is that bad? The other quest hook I thought was, is the door open? So then is the party the ones to travel through? Because I thought if it's open and all this stuff comes out, I feel like that happens a lot. So the idea that it's there, but no one wants to go through. So the party is tasked with going through this locked door. But is it that this god that's been trapped is on the other side, was my first thought.
Well, I suppose that the question could also be, can they just walk through? Or is this kind of a sword in the stone thing where it's like, it's there for everybody, but only a certain person, or you need to do something. You need to find the key or keys, right?
Yeah, is it like you have to prove, or maybe the doorway proves that you're worthy to walk through, and the only way you know is by walking through, right? And like, it may severely injure you or kill you if you walk through and you're not deemed worthy, you know? Mitch, to your idea, the idea that I had as you were talking about it, I was like, I wonder if the imprisonment that the god bestows upon another god is actually being banished as a mortal, stripped of your powers.
Yeah,
so it's
we
actually like
about
the
that.
god, comes to like the party and somehow convinces the party that they are the god because they've either lost their powers or none of the priests have heard from this god for a while or whatever it was. And they walk up and he's like, hey, I see that you have these holy symbols. Like, I am such and such, whoever it is. And the party either like believes him or not, doesn't believe him. But then you have to figure out like, well, how do you reverse the like mortal curse that's been bestowed upon this god who's now been banished to the mortal world? And like, what is that? But like the god is like left with all of these memories of all of eternity and like, could be seen as just like this incredibly insane person walking around the world at the same time, and maybe that's the banishment.
So I'll see your awesome idea, Chris, and I'm going to raise it because what if, and I think you mentioned this, and that what if like the god lost some of their memories? What if the god was imprisoned in a mortal body and completely doesn't remember who he or she is? Doesn't remember that they are a god in general. And here's where I'm raising it, Chris. What if you and your PCs are tasked to go and find this god, and through a series of adventures, you find out that one of the PCs is the god who is forgotten?
That's what I was thinking.
Yes.
Well, then it asks the question, like, does the PC know this beforehand, or are you just like picking one at random to be that? And it's like, oh.
Yeah. Well, I wonder, like, you could kind of play around with, like, even an imprisoned god who's been imprisoned in a mortal's body, like, and has no memories. Maybe they still, like, have some sort of powers. So if you have, like, paladins and clerics in the group, their powers still work. And part of the clues you can kind of plan along the way is if they get too far, if the group, like, splits up, all of a sudden, like, the group that isn't with the one PC who is the god, their powers are, like, either nerfed or they go away because they only work in proximity when this god is imprisoned in a mortal shell. Which also, I played Mortal Shell recently, and it's a great game. Another Dark Souls-like game. Loved it.
But yeah, you could also do like dream sequences or whatever, like memories that only those gods would have from the past that, like, for whatever reason, if they're in this sort of magical realm, every player gets some sort of dream from their past.
Yeah.
But that person gets a dream from like 1,000 years ago or something. And, you know, they talk about it, it's like, well, that's weird. Why did I get this dream of something that happened from like a war 1,000 years ago or something like that? You know, and you could play with some of those fun elements too, as like a way of like, they may have imprisoned them in their memories, but something subconsciously doesn't get, you know, locked away. And so it comes out when you're dreaming or whatever.
Yeah, I imagine that you need to be prepared for a little bit of a DM gut punch, though, because I can see, like, if I had was doing this campaign and I was the DM, Chris, you would totally be the player that at the beginning of the campaign would be like, guys, what if one of us is? And like immediately just be like, dang it. Like you just say it all trolly and then it'd be like, all right, well, anyway, Neal, that was kind of like your idea though, the locked door though. Mm-hmm. So I want to kind of brainstorm on what beyond a god could be behind this like locked door that either you can just open and nobody's been smart enough to go through, or You need to get some sort of key or something. Like, what's behind that door besides a god?
Yeah, I mean, Neal, just for clarification, were you thinking this is like, because we talked about like the sword and the stone, are you imagining this is just like a door in a building that nobody's been able to ever get through?
It just
that like
appears.
is kind of like the town lore, like there's this door that's locked that nobody can get through and nobody knows where it goes. Is that what you're kind of imagining?
Yeah, and I think of like when I kind of see it in my head, I think of all those like brass statues where the one part that everyone goes to and touches is like super, super shiny. So it's just, it's a door. Like, I don't think there's like a lot of like, it's not flashy. And so, but the door handle is really bright because everyone tries it, that kind of thing. And so eventually someone either figures it out, either, like I said, either the PCs figure it out or it's open. And for some reason, the PCs are the only ones that could go through it. My first thought is definitely like another realm, because it could be an introduction to like really shake up your campaign. If you wanted to introduce, like it goes to Eberron, or, you know, with the introduction of Spelljammer. Oh man, because I was just thinking of it opening in kind of that Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but there's nothing stopping it from just opening on the other side.
Mr. Tumnus.
Yeah, but it could be in a ship. Like, it could be in a Spelljammer, and you get to the other side.
I was totally thinking Spelljammer. Like, hey, we've talked about Spelljammer coming to 5e for years now. It's finally happening. Yeah. It's going to Spelljammer.
Yeah. Well, you just open it up, and it's just a door in the ship that they never figured out how they could open either.
Well, and that's kind of what I was thinking, is like, what if it's just like a connection to a door on the other side of the planet or something, you know, like that, like the only way it opens is just if somebody opens it from that side, and it's like some random broken down old wizard's tower that for whatever reason from centuries long ago in an abandoned tower that's either crumbled like in the middle of a jungle somewhere or something. And it's like your players happen to be in the town, or it's a door to the past or to the future of your world, right? Where it's like all of a sudden somebody comes through with like ancient armor on or something like that. And it's like, this is super weird. Or I know we talked about this in last episode, or if it's like, you know, the Chris Pratt movie where somebody comes back from the future or whatever. And it's like, oh, this is super weird. Now we're meeting, or the people that walk through the door are your players from like the future coming back for whatever reason.
Time travel door.
Yeah, could be a time travel door.
Is it Dorlorian? Is that what it is?
I like it.
Ba-dum-bum.
I think the less trolly version, Mitch, you brought it up, where, oh, maybe one of us is just a god, where you just let the players come up with rumors, and you just take the one that works, the one that's just because there are so many ideas that can, with a locked door, the ideas are essentially endless because there's nothing until there is something. So I think it'd really be one that for me, I would probably just figure out what the players think and then just steal one of those ideas.
Yeah. I like the idea that you open the door, and like you guys were talking about potentially being in somewhere like a tavern, and you open the door and you look on the other side and see like the tavern counter, like nothing, like it's like, oh, it's a door to nowhere. Like, and, but if you were to step through, what it actually is it's a door to, I mean, we're like with the MCU going crazy right now with multiverse stuff, like this would be very like on point, but basically that you're stepping into, yes, the same world, but things are different. And so they're like, if you do walk through, if you just look through, you're like, oh, it doesn't go anywhere. It's like literally just an archway. That's weird. Who put this here? But it's a doorway into another universe of your realm, of your plane. And with that, there's always the chance that you run into different versions of yourself and the NPCs of your campaign. That could be good or bad. Who knows what happened in another life?
I like it. Chris, what is your number 3?
All right. So along the same lines, I have a guild that you can put into your world. It is a thieves guild. It has nothing to do with what you guys have talked about, actually, to this point. It is a thieves guild made up of were-rats.
Okay.
That's the idea.
I love it.
Thieves guild made up of were-rats.
And they're the only ones that have the key to the locked door where the god has been imprisoned. Just so,
no, I was just thinking about it.
Oh, just so we're all abundantly clear, like while we all talk on this podcast, you're just as good. Whoever you are listening to this right now, you are just as good at this as we are because you saw what I just did.
So that's my idea, is just you somewhere in your world, like either you, the way you could discover it, I imagine, is like somebody like is walking along and kicks a random rat in the alleyway or something. It's just like, poof, there's all of a sudden this like thief that appears out of nowhere. It's like, hey pal, what's going on here? You know,
that's, man, I guess I don't know where rat lore that much, but I assume it's the same thing as like a werewolf and a werebear, that they can turn into a rat as well as like a were-rat.
Yeah,
that's actually great for like, that's an amazing thief's like,
I know, that's how I was thinking. Yeah,
ability. Like, just like, I don't know how they keep breaking in. Also, we got a rat problem. It's real annoying.
Your level 1 adventures are like, go to the cellar, and then wait, no, oh, we died. Well, I think the idea of subverting it, because a lot of the times that comes up, that it's like a really vile version or really disgusting or really downtrodden. I think the idea of having this really successful thieves guild, but that's the reason why. That this were-rat, and then it doesn't have to be that they're gross. It just happens to be that they have the ability to do these certain things. Because I think of, you know, Master Splinter's not gross. He lives in a sewer, but
it's also not a were-rat, but
yeah. Or is he?
Have you ever seen him not as a rat? I don't know. I mean,
I'm pretty sure he started as a rat. He's the opposite of a were-rat because it's a human who gets infected with lycanthropy. What is a rat that turns into a kind of humanoid?
I mean, it all
were-man?
A were-man? Yeah.
It all depends on what ridiculous origin story we want to go with, because the current iteration of the background behind me is that they are the reincarnation.
Okay, here's my counter idea. A thieves guild of rats who are werehumans.
Even better.
Gosh, this is getting worse. Okay, immediately I thought like there are giant rats in D&D as well. They're like, giant rats are not huge, right? They're still, I think, small, but they're big rats. And I love the idea that this like thieves guild has these members that are called brutes, and they transform into giant rats. But when they transform into their were-rat selves, that they were hill giants that got infected by were-rat lycanthropy. And so they're the brutes of the team. And so if you go and try to take down this thieves guild, like, you're going to run into some brutes, and they're going to turn into were-rat versions of hill giants, which I like.
Yeah, and I mean, technically you have to play with the rules here a little bit, because I think were-rats are still like medium-sized humanoids. Like, I think they're just like human-shaped rats, you know? But like, you would obviously have to play with the rules a little fast and loose to say like, hey, they're actually like small creatures or tiny creatures when they turn into were-rats, you know, or whatever. Yeah, so you could do it based off of like size. Like, if you were a medium creature, you now become a tiny. If you were a large creature, you become a medium creature. It's like 2 steps down or something like that is the size that you become if you're a were-rat or something like that, right? To make it work out. But could be really fun. All of a sudden, like, hey, our little were-rat friends are in trouble. And bam, here comes this large-sized rat through the door. Like, holy crap.
I love it.
And their ultimate villain is Pickle Rick.
Pickle Rick.
Okay, so that puts us on number 2. Mitch, what is idea number 2?
My idea number 2 is Iron Mages, which of course I liked because it sounded like Iron Maiden a little bit. And so I'm thinking of you're doing an all wizard campaign where all of the wizards get golem tombs, but they create not just golems, but they're like golem armor. So you have this point in the campaign where it switches from like you're just playing wizards to your wizards that get into sets of golem armor to go and fight battles together. It's ridiculous. It's a little bit wonky with the rules. I was kind of wondering what you guys would say about like, how would you do this and how would you do this well? Because you're taking like a monster from the monster manual and you're now saying it's a suit of armor. Can you still like use your powers, your wizard powers while you're inside? Is it totally different? Like, I love the idea, but I don't know exactly how I would implement it. So I want to hear what your guys' ideas are.
Okay, my first idea is that I thought that Iron Mages was a food competition show, but it wasn't.
With food mages, Iron Food Mages. That's what I would have called it.
It wasn't. So my first thought to answer your question actually is depending on how long you want that to be, if it was a one shot, I would just look to polymorph as kind of like the fastest rule. I don't think that's the most fun that you could get out of it, but if it's definitely the fastest way to get from here to there.
Yeah.
Where just like, once you run out of hit points, the mage pops out, and then they're good to go. I don't think that's necessarily the most fun, but mechanically it would probably be your easiest.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you could almost do it like Attack on Titan style, where like the person becomes that sort of Iron Mage, right? And inside they take on all the characteristics, like they see and feel and move through, the Iron Golem sort of thing. So like if they're doing magic, you actually see them like doing the spells and things through the suit of armor. And yeah, the idea that I had too was like if they hit 0 hit points or whatever, they're unconscious, but they are just no longer the suit of armor. It either breaks apart or whatever it could be. That's what I kind of envision. It's kind of like morphing the two together of them being able to do magic, but it's them doing it through the mech suit sort of thing. That's kind of the idea that I had for it.
Yeah, I wonder how overpowered it would be to be like, you're basically a golem, an iron golem from the monster manual, but you can use your wizard spells. Like, so I wonder if I would change it to be like, you can't use your spells while inside the golem armor, with the idea of like, you're not able to do or maybe I would depend on what the spell was, right? Like if it was just verbal, like why not? But if it's somatic, if it needs like components, like you don't have that maneuverability, I would imagine, as you're inside the golem armor. But I like the idea of like adding on things that you can change to the golem as well, like being able to change like the weaponry it has, and maybe you don't start out with all of the golem stats, like because if I remember correctly, there's a lot of immunities that iron golems, if we're talking about iron golems, like have. Maybe like you basically, as you level up, you create, like as a DM, a way to level up your golems and there'd be different branches that you can have your players choose so that they can be different. But
you can create microtransactions that they pay you to get different like shoulder plates and stuff.
That's the whole goal. That's what we're all trying to get to as a DM. So
check out this cool new emote I have on my golem. Well,
EA DMs.
Do I have a spray paint feature on this?
The other thought I had was looking, and it's a common DM thing to do, is to look how you would probably approach spellcasting in a different way. We've had the same Vancian system for so long. My other thought would be if you look at either spell slots or spell levels as a way to empower the golem. So maybe the golem has certain things that it can do, and then whoever is using it just uses up what spells they have. That way it's not limitless, and maybe it's a little bit different from what their normal spells are. Because I think if you have an entire group, did one person go into divination and now they're just in a golem, like, look at what I can see.
Yeah.
Probably not the most exciting version for them. But then they could instead spin the spell slots to shoot cannons or whatever things you have on the golem.
Yeah, it would be a lot of work to set this system up, but I do like that idea, Neal, of like if we're not just starting out the campaign with you're a bunch of mages that get inside golem suits of armor, but this is like a point that you reach. I like the idea of going, okay, you've created different types of wizards or sorcerers with different focuses. So as you start that golem part of the campaign, the golems all start with having some sort of difference to them, and they're specialized depending on the PC's direction that they've chosen.
Yeah, the idea that I had too was like, I wonder if it's like not even something that you were like, that they knew was going to happen, but it's something they stumble across like in an ancient burial ground or, whatever it could be. And like they find these suits in this underground place, right? And the suits are in like they are their own being, but they need somebody inside to control them. So like while you're in there, like the suits have their own characters and they have their own like personalities that only the other
like
people
Jarvis,
that are inside the
different
suits.
versions of Jarvis.
Yeah, kind of like Jarvis, right? Like, yeah, I mean, that's kind of the idea, right? Where each person, like they have these memories, they have these things that they can teach. And it's kind of like the advancement system is like along the way, they'll come across certain situations that will require them to do a barrel roll, or whatever it is. And they do something like that they never expected, to be able to do. And that's the way some of the advancement works or whatever.
I just love the idea of 4 or 5 like iron golems that are like decked out in different wares, like rushing towards a bunch of red dragons, like about to do battle. Like
it feels like you need to have like an action sequence, like running with explosions in the background with these mages just transforming into the mechs or whatever.
Yeah.
And then here's the cool idea. You could mighty
Here's
morph
the cool idea.
into all of them coming together into one massive Power Ranger.
Yeah, of course. I mean, of course I knew through brainstorming that we would get
Voltron.
there.
Voltron, Power Rangers.
I call Red Iron Golem.
It looks like a really tall Iron Mage who has like a big staff and just all of a sudden he can cast spells. All right, you're the right hand. All right, you're the left hand.
And then it turns into Pacific Rim very quickly, and kaiju start
now
coming
you've
out.
lost me because I wish I liked those movies, but I don't. Anyway, Neal, what's your number 2?
Number 2, I entitled. It's the only one that had like a solid title. Shrubbery Surprise. Basically, I already poked fun at the idea of a cellar full of rats for your like first level party. So another idea I came up with was to start out that there are plants that have been basically taken over by some sort of druid. They're either actually eating people, they're feeding on people, people are passing out, something.
Attack of the Killer Tomatoes.
Yes, exactly. Where basically you could have awakened plants be your lower level like starting campaign rather than, again, a cellar full of rats. What was the other one? Little Shop of Horrors. What is that one? Where something like that.
Little Shop of Horrors.
And
this idea just makes me think of like somebody's walking in a dark alley and they turn around and see this plant like off in the distance. Then they turn around and walk and then they turn around again and it's like closer.
Oh, that's a great scene.
The next thing you know, they just look down and there's this shrub like at their feet that just jumps up and latches on.
Yes. Perfect.
Man, where's
Bulbasaur, use Vine Whip.
But yeah, like I said, it's just like a low level campaign to start out in a different way was my thought behind it.
Shrubs turning into it's a zombie movie with shrubs instead of zombies.
Yeah, pretty much. And then each shrub is actually a former humanoid.
Where'd that guy go? Done. Perfect. There's not much to that one. Chris, what is your number 2?
Okay, my number 2 is in a world where you have sky ships, or maybe if you don't have sky ships, there are groups of people who have become sky pirates. So even if you don't have sky ships as a form of transportation, you could use sky ships as a form of piracy where they jump into keeps or wherever it is from up above. Or the other brilliant idea that I had, the sky pirates are actually werehawks. Just kidding. That's not actually.
Whoa.
I just love how you started that one. Just like, it's in a world where you have sky ships or you don't have sky ships. Forget the premise I just started with. But I get what you're saying. Like, this is like the first time you start seeing sky ships. It may not be like a pre-established thing, which I feel like is...
Well, that's what's scary about it, right? Like,
yeah, that's how I would go with it. Yeah, all of a sudden, like, your PCs are in a peaceful kingdom that is way up high on a mountaintop where they just have, like, all these just natural formations that end up being good defenses that make that kingdom really safe. And then maybe one of your PCs is a town guard, and they're just looking out at the beauty of the day, and from the clouds all of a sudden come ships, and they're coming towards you, and it's just like, what do? You've never been prepared for this before.
Well, it's like a kingdom that's like on the shoreline, and all of a sudden you see a warring nation with like 40 ships on the horizon. Like, that's terrifying. But then you see them coming through the air, and it's like, oh crap, that's terrifying, you know?
Yeah.
And it could be, I mean, there's no shortage of ways that you could take to get it. Is it from a different dimension somehow that they've gotten here? Is it from a different kingdom?
Are these those hippo guys from Spelljammer?
Yeah, the GIF. The GIF Yankee.
Not the GIF Yankee.
Mind flayers.
It's GIFs, right? No, GIF, the hippo men.
No, GIF are the hippo men.
Okay.
Yes.
Some people pronounce it GIF.
It's too close, man.
It's a big deal.
Too close.
And then there's the GIF. But I was just listing everything.
Yeah.
Spelljammer.
Or I'm just going to take every one of Chris's ideas and put a giant spin on it. It could be cloud giants coming at your city, because that's even scarier. So now I got to figure out how to work giants into Chris's third idea without even knowing it. All right.
Oh, super easy. Just wait. Just
Okay,
you wait.
Cool. So we got hill giants as the brutes of the were rat thieves guild. We've got cloud giants as the scariest sky pirates of all.
Dude, can you just imagine all of a sudden it's like hovering 20, 30 feet off the ground and just out jumps these massive cloud giants down into your city?
Oh, yeah. They land like superhero style and it breaks like the street below them, or they just land on people. Like you're getting right at the catapults and one just steps out and like crashes on top of it. That's just terrifying.
Those would be big ships, though, too, at the same time.
Yeah, it would be the size of like the kingdoms.
Yeah.
Well, they're like, oh yeah, they're pretty close. Oh no, wait, no, they're not. Oh no.
Yeah.
It just,
Well, it'd be like essentially like, I mean, take what you want from Rogue One, where they had the city that had the crystals that they were mining. What was the episode or the Star Wars where they were mining all the kyber crystals in the city? Is that Solo? Which one was that?
Yeah, you mean the spice mines of Kessel, Chris?
No.
In
It was
Solo,
with
the worst Star Wars
the
movie there
two
ever
monks
been.
that like could use the Force. They had the kyber crystals. I don't remember which one it was.
no, it's
Is it
Solo?
a movie?
The worst movie
With
ever.
kyber crystals in a movie, Chris? You talking about Clone Wars or
I don't
something?
remember. Somebody will hit us up with it.
I don't
But
think
like
it's a
I just
movie,
imagine
but
like
I
it's
could
like
be
a
wrong.
Star Destroyer descending upon a city where it's all of a sudden like, oh, that thing is as big as like, if not even bigger than our entire city here. You know, it just like hovers over and blocks the sun from your town. And just imagine it could be terrifying if it was cloud giants.
And it makes sense with cloud giants because they're super obsessed with wealth. Are you thinking about Caravan of Courage, Chris? Is that what movie? There's no mining in that movie.
The holiday special. So wait, I've completely lost my train of thought. Does that mean, yes, we are on idea number 1. You're the best idea you've got, Mitch.
So the idea that I have is the ever-growing wood. Okay, so I started out with this idea, and first of all, it's like Neal's idea of shrub attacks turned up to 11 to be a whole campaign. And I started out with this idea, and I really liked it, and I no longer like it, and I'll explain why. So, nations are at war, and one of these nations, the opposing nation to your PCs and the adventure you're in, is a nation that is run by druids. And so you could imagine what a nation run by druids looks like. I think if Magic the Gathering is the Celeste, help me out, guys who played Magic, the Ravnica Guild Celestia, green and white.
I think you're right.
Yes, I'm probably butchering the way that it's said, but or like if it's more primal, it could be like the Gruul Guild. I know I said that one right. But so like a bunch of druids running a nation, and they've just been fed up with civilization, destroying of the forest, destroying of the natural world. And so they are now using the powers of nature as their army, fighting against the other nations and the ever-growing wood, as it were. Like the forest is just spreading and taking over. And so I like this idea because I was thinking about how do you make enemies that aren't just like your classic, like, I'm a bad guy who likes to do bad things. You can kind of like relate to these druids, and which I think is a much more interesting kind of enemy for the campaign. But then I started to think about it, and I was like, man, this would be really dark. Like, you're going to battle against like woodland creatures that are trying to attack you and kill you by the direction of druids. There's like plant enemies, like trees, like fighting against Ents. Like And so I started out really liking this idea, and then I was like, I don't know if I could stomach this idea. Just like, and you have elephants coming to destroy you. What do? Well, we take the elephants down, and like that just sounds so horrible. So I'd have to if I was DMing this, I don't know what I would do, but I'd want to have there be some sort of shift or like, I don't know. Does that sound like, am I on the right page? This is kind of dark. It's a weirdly dark story.
Yeah, but everyone needs a dark story to tell at some point or another. Inevitably, your group will want to play. Well, inevitably, like they're like, oh, I want to play an evil campaign. I mean, it comes up. I mean, it's required. Also, if it makes you feel better, my next one isn't going to be very bright. So mine's super dark. So
mine is too.
I just want to state this about the campaign that I just started. You know, there's this is not the story we need right now. So we don't need to play in a game where your adventuring party is just like, oh, it's great, we get to just burn down the forest. We don't need that story right now. So that's what I don't like about it anymore. But
okay, I accept.
Yeah, in a world being riddled with drought and climate control.
That's why I want there to be like a shift at some point in the campaign. Like, I don't know what that would be, but I wouldn't want it to just be like from A to B where you defeat the like Druid nation and they're destroyed. I wouldn't like that. All right, Neal, give it to us. Your terrible idea.
So, I mean, there is no way this hasn't come up somewhere else. Preface. But I'm going to bring it up here because some of the spells that are in the books are bad. Like, or evil. Like, I don't know of good ways to use certain spells on the spell list. So one of those spells,
you kidding me? Can use them against bad guys. They're always better that way.
Like druids.
So
use evil spells against evil. 2 wrongs make a right.
Exactly. So Suicide Squad and in D&D where you use so also Gaius is also pronounced Gesh because it's from Irish folklore. But basically, that's what you do. You know, Amanda Waller puts the bomb in the back of the person, and if they don't do the right thing, off it goes. So you use that spell as the way you control the group of people to go be the Suicide Squad.
That is dark.
So I think we have very different ideas of what we meant when we originally said we have really dark ideas, because mine is not like your two.
Well, I just think of, and I also think of like the most recent version, the most recent movie where it's all very lighthearted. It still has a very dark tone and terrible things happen in it. But the idea of just having, I can't quite decide if I would want like a really large group of characters that everyone is playing and you kind of see what's left over at the end. And then like, that's the campaign you move forward. Or if you just have a lot of disposable NPCs, there's no nice way to say that, where things happen, but inevitably the party that the players have created is the party that would move forward in the story. And there's a lot of redemption arcs that happen in those, but there's also still just bad characters. So yeah, essentially using Gesh to have the Suicide Squad in D&D.
Well, my idea, the idea that I have coming off of yours is kind of like, in our world, we have the group Anonymous, right? That does all the hacking that by all intents and purposes, people would say like hacking is not a good thing. And yet they're like this group that like could do very bad things if they wanted to. And yet typically use them to be like, hey, Russia, stop doing dumb stuff or we're going to shut down everything that you run. Like it could be that sort of thing where it's like a group of people that don't want the clout or the, accolades for, if somebody goes out because somebody, a kid has been kidnapped from a town and they bring the kid back and the bad guy and they get all of the, acknowledgement and stuff. It could be a group of people that uses those things to make bad guys turn themselves in anonymously. And so they're using nefarious means, but are they bad people? I mean, they're using them for kind of good reasons, right? Like, does that make it right? Or are they kind of like the anti-hero sort of person, in the group that's like, they're a hero, but if we met them, we might say like, yeah, torturing people into doing the right thing is probably still not the right thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I like the idea. I like the idea of like a Suicide Squad, Thunderbolts like campaign. I think I'd want to actually introduce it that way, like before even starting. Like, and I think I'd want like a Rick Flag like character in as a PC. Like one of the PCs is not like a prisoner with this spell that's controlling them, but part of whatever organization is using these villains. I mean, really, you could like your players could create villains that you get to then use in other campaigns before they like were put into this organization, or your players could pick villains that you fought in the past and say, "Oh, I get to play them now." Like, I think it'd be fun, but also it might be like good establishing that from the beginning, because as you were mentioning, Neal, with the latest movie, like there's still lightheartedness in it, and there are characters that are quote unquote villains that have things that ground them, relationships like family and things like that, that some of them turn out to be the most heroic members of the group. And so maybe you have a mix of that with the PCs that are, they're a villain that's being used here, but they're not all bad. Like kind of that whole idea of like, not just the simply I'm a bad guy to be a bad guy villain. Maybe you have some of that part of the team too, which they're the ones that are going to have to be a little bit controlled by that Rick Flag person. And yeah, it could be really fun with a good group that kind of has a good head on their shoulders of how to do this well.
I always like that preface. So if you have a bad group that their head is not on their shoulders, don't use this idea. No.
I mean, it probably like will just turn into a very evil campaign and very dark, as you said, if that's the case, and they're just going to run around killing everybody all the time. That's what it's going to turn into. So if that's what you want to do, then that's what you're going to do. But
sounds like a really hard campaign.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to DM that one. So
no.
Chris, round us out with dark idea number 3, aka your number 1.
Okay. All right, Mitch, I'm excited to see how you turn this into something
Giants.
with giants. So the idea, I mean, there's been movies about this sort of thing, right? And the idea is your players walk into a town and they start to figure out that, most taverns would stay open super late, right? They'd stay open past dark, whatever it was. But they're told very specifically on their first time coming into town, like every guest is told that at night they have to be in a specific building because every resident and business of this town knows to mark their doors with a specific thing at night because a fog rolls in, right? And whatever houses aren't marked are free game for whatever lurks in the fog that's out there, The sort of thing like the idea is that the town does not have enough resources to take care of the problem, but they know how to protect against the problem. They've sent people out before to try and fight the problem or figure out what it is, and they've never come back, sort of thing. But your players are told very early on in their experience, like, if you are inside somewhere after sundown, that is where you stay the rest of the night until sunup, for whatever reason it could be. And maybe that first night when you're there, the players are asleep and all of a sudden they hear a shriek outside for whatever reason. Somebody didn't make it back inside and something is happening to this person. And now your players are left with this sort of moral dilemma of like, do we go outside to try and investigate? Do we leave it alone? Does one player hear that at night and then have to wake up the rest of the group and figure out what they're going to do? Who knows? So it's the idea of the fog rolling into a town. Mitch, go.
So you said, how do they protect themselves? They just have to be inside.
There's some ritual that they have to put like on their door. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm thinking this is like in the middle of nowhere, frozen tundra. These are obviously frost giants, and like if you don't put the marking, a frost giant hand just comes into your bedroom, like bursts through the whole wall and rips you out, and people wake up to seeing your entire room destroyed. And so they're taking you away for eating, or maybe they've got some weird ritual where even bigger giants come and they need some humans to put on the outside of their. I don't know.
Just imagine Dane Cook's like comedy skit.
This is very Mist like if you've seen that movie or yeah.
I mean, my two thoughts were, one, what is fog if not just really low cloud giants? Two,
I didn't want to use cloud giants again. That was my thing.
Well, the other thing is, what if the other option is obviously it's not actually fog, it's smoke because it's fire giants.
Yeah. Well, and looking like out your window at night and seeing the fiery beard of like a fire giant like moving slowly.
Yeah.
And you don't want it to be like a ton of them. This could just be a lone fire giant or frost giant. Or we don't need it to be a giant, but like a certain creature. And maybe there's other towns in the area that are plagued by this. There's some sort of, the fog is perhaps like attached to this being, whatever this being is. And so it just roams the land looking for, it has some sort of strange understanding that if these people do this ritual, it's paying homage to them. Maybe that's all it is. It lashes out in anger if homage has not been paid to it. And so the people of this land have to do that.
And maybe people don't know that it's a fire giant. All they see is like, because their windows are shuttered, their doors are shut, they can just see through the cracks. Like, maybe it's such dense fog that all I can see is just the fog just lights up bright red as this being passes, and they hear the loud noises and they see the footprints. And maybe the footprints are a staple throughout the city normally, like regularly. They're just always there. And like, you ask questions when you get into the city of like, what's that about? That's super weird, you know? And then they have to explain their like ritual the barkeeper does or whatever every single night. And whoever doesn't pay homage like disappears, or their house is destroyed, or whatever it might be.
This is definitely dark. Like, I mean, this has the, like, this is a horror movie as a campaign for me. Like, I can very much visualize the fog rolling in, this people like trying to sleep in their beds with their blankets over them, like shaking in fear as they hear the sounds of whatever creature is outside moving through their town, or like, and if they hear screams, it's like, oh gosh, somebody didn't do what they were supposed to do, or somebody was like, didn't get home in time.
You hear the crunching of the house under the foot or whatever.
Yeah. My husband hasn't returned from the hunting trip.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah.
But then being frozen in spot.
Yeah, they walk outside and they're just frozen in ice, right? As like in ever like true ice or whatever. So they're just always there.
Yeah.
Right. So you have these memorials.
Or
they're like turned molten into rock, right? And so they're just like stuck there.
I mean, yeah, it could be like a Medusa-like creature, and so the statues like remain in the town, and like, I mean, I imagine this town being very like, this is not a happy place to live, and so I like, could they remove the statues? Yes, but one, maybe they're afraid if they do that there will be consequences, but two, they leave those statues as a reminder of the danger of not following the rituals, not
And there's always the question too of like, well, why don't people just move then? Well, because it's expensive to move, and people can't, like in a peasant village somewhere, they can't afford to uproot their life, and so they're trying to make do the best that they can where they're at, and they've realized like, maybe it's putting like if it's a Medusa creature, maybe they put a mirror on their door or whatever, because it like Medusas don't want to turn themselves to stone, right? So like that's what
they
prevents
shy away
them from.
I like that a lot.
They shy away from it, right? Or whatever it is.
Oh gosh, and then like there's a big storm that comes, and you hear the mirror fall off the door and shatter, and it's like that's the start of like your campaign or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe this town is very far from other places, and there have been stories about people trying to leave and the fog catching up to them as they are leaving. Like, you're not allowed to leave this place.
Yeah. Interesting.
I love it.
It's a giant Medusa.
All right, well that's our 9 ideas, which means we're at our number 10. So Neal, you came up with this brilliant idea. So how you want to do this, man?
Okay, so for our final idea, it will be a collaborative effort. We've broken it into 3 parts, and Chris, you have those 3 parts. You have not yet assigned them.
No.
I think we should assign them randomly, Chris.
Oh gosh. Okay.
mention what they are, and then we will randomly assign them.
All right, so here's how we'll do it. The three things that we're going to come up with are a who, a what, and a where. So 3 key elements. So Mitch, you have a dice. So I will be numbers D6. 1 and 2.
Okay.
Mitch, you'll be 3 and 4, and Neal will be 5 and a 6. 1 and 2 will be the who, and then 3 and 4 will be the what, and then the where will be 5 and 6.
You just assigned us all numbers, and then all
yes,
right.
you did.
So number
I got it in my
1,
head.
2, 1, 2, 1 and 2 is who. 3 and 4 is what. 5 and 6 is where of the campaign. Let's do this. All right. Who wants to go first with the roll? Who's going first?
I'll go first.
Okay, Neal, you have the who, not the band.
Yes.
Chris, we'll give you the next one. You are the where, and so
Nice.
I have the what. Yeah, let's do this all at the same time. We got to come up with it, and then we're going to share it, and then we're talk about the story. So let's give ourselves a little bit of time, and then we'll give it to it.
This could be totally awful.
I love
depending on like. So we cannot deviate from what we come up with. We have to try and figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's so hard to
All
come up with a what without knowing a where. No.
I know. Well, that's like I'm like a where. What is my where? I don't know who the who is, so I have no idea, or I don't know what the what is.
Fire giants in the frozen tundras.
A Medusa in a town with fog. Okay, I've got my where.
Okay. I have my who. I have one who.
All right. So we've come up with it. Us coming up with a campaign begins now. Chris, you have, why don't you tell us how we're revealing?
So the way we're going to do it is we're going to come up with, I have come up with the where, the setting. So I will say that first, and then we will fill it in with Neal's who, the whatever it is that our players are going up against or interacting with. And then we will round it out with Mitch's what, whether it's an item or whatever it is in this scenario to kind of create. And then from there, I think we can shape it however we want into a fun story. So
yeah,
the location that I have selected for us to create a one shot or to start a campaign or whatever it is our players are traveling on a dense jungle path. That is the location for
deep in the jungle.
Deep in the jungle. So Neal, who are our players coming across on a jungle path?
Cool. So this totally works. It's perfect. So the who I have is a tiefling rogue who besets the party because they are technically not alive anymore, and they are seeking the party's help to remedy that situation.
Okay. So they are some sort of undead tiefling in the jungle. And the what I have is that a cursed item is corrupting the leadership. So we've got deep in the jungle. You guys are away from civilization. You come across an undead of some sort tiefling. And I guess the question is he the one that is corrupted by the item? Is he the leader, or is he telling you about a leader?
I think a really easy thing to say is like weird things happen in jungles, and it feels like something undead or whatever it might be. These players may have somehow stumbled into the Feywild at some point that they didn't know about. Like maybe this is like a really weird deep path that they've now come across this tiefling who's maybe either also lost in the Feywild or whatever. I mean, that's one idea that I have for where it could lead.
Well, my thought was, what if the tiefling... so I said rogue, so there's two versions. Either they have intentionally or unintentionally, but either way, they are in the possession of this cursed item. So were they tasked to take it away because it was corrupting everyone, or did they steal it and now have been corrupted themselves and are seeking help from the party to try and remedy that situation?
Yeah, the tiefling's got to play an important part. So either he stole the item, she stole the item, or perhaps they were the one that brought the item in the first place, and then they were killed and brought back to life as a minion or something. But yeah, undead cursed item corrupting the jungles.
Done. We've done it. We just want to take a moment to thank all three of us for coming on and talking about these ideas.
Yes.
All right, so we have given you our ideas, and we came up with one at the end together, which was definitely the most bonkers idea, which maybe that's the one that you really want to run with. So in next episode, we are going to have another Creation Inspiration episode, and for that one, we're going to have the other members of the Block Party Podcast Network. So we're going to have from Detentions and Dragons, we're going to have Matt and Josh on, and we're going to have from Dungeons and Dragons and Daughters, Kurt on, to share with you their 3 ideas each. And then together, they're going to go through the same pains as we did coming up with one all together. So I look forward to that. I look forward to hearing that. I hope all of you guys do as well.
So yeah, if you've liked what you've heard today, we would really love for you to go onto your podcatcher of choice and leave a 5-star review and a rating, or whatever the highest equivalency is for a rating on that podcasting catcher. That would be great. We would love that. We'd appreciate that. It helps us get out and help more people by being heard by them. You can follow us on Twitter at DMS_block. That's at DMsBlock. And there you can see when new episodes come out and anything else that we publish on there. As always, the Dungeon Masters Block is a proud member of the Block Party Podcast Network, where you can listen to other shows like Geek Wars, Detentions and Dragons, and Dungeons and Dragons and Daughters, and more.
And that's it for this episode. There's more?
Go, you go.
And that's it for this episode of the Dungeon Masters Block, the place where we come together to talk about the Dungeon Master, the most important person in the game.
Have a good night, everyone.
We'll leave the light on for you.
And remember to always keep on dungeon mastering.
Are you doing like Motel 8? We'll leave the light on.
Motel 6, yeah. I have a bunch of them written down somewhere that were like super random sign-offs. Where did I have those? Yeah. Stay classy, blockheads. See ya, Space Cowboys. And that's the way the dice roll.
I don't think I should do the intro because I'm the worst Mitch Connolly.
Oh. Chris is changing his name. Wait for it.
Meh.
Yeah, there you go.
Great. There's no average. They're just best, meh, and worst, leading me to believe that even the best might be somewhat meh.
Well, there we go.
I was going to put mediocre, but then I couldn't remember how to spell mediocre, so I was like,
also,
You know,
sounds worse than average.
The best part is at the end of this, that this is what all the Zoom tracks are going to get named. Like when it comes out into the files.
And the best part is if I don't log out of this account and use a different one, the next Zoom call that I go into is just going to be Mitch Connolly. And whoever I'm talking with is going to be like, what?
Have you met the best Mitch Connolly? Yeah, I wasn't impressed. Yeah, you definitely don't want to meet the other two.
Goodbye.